Hi, this is Ed in San Diego, and today's show is all about American energy independence. Our two special guests are en route into the studio. They'll be here momentarily. We're going to be talking about the resurgence of American energy production, recent headlines with Exxon Mobil taking over shale producer, this giant. And we're going to get into this with Hampton Dowling, who's a big-time executive for a security company. He'll tell us all about that. And with deep experience in the military and international business. Also joining us is David EDICK Jr., who's Hampton is in Washington, D.C. Today, and David EDICK Jr. is right here in San Diego. He and I have known each other a while. He's been on several shows, so stay tuned and stand by. Hi, finally, we're here.
Good.
Welcome, David EDICK Jr. We are recording right now, live.
Oh, wow.
And
Here we are.
just say hi. Yeah, and Hampton should be coming in any second, and we'll open that door as soon as he arrives, hopefully. So I'm glad you two had a chance to talk. I sent him over, I don't know whether he told you that, but I sent him over your talking points so that you'd be in sync somehow. He's a very interesting guy. I'm sure you already had a conversation a little bit.
Yeah, we got started. Yeah, there's lots to talk about. Jeez, yeah. He
Yeah,
was
really.
just coming back from Vancouver and talking about critical minerals. So, yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So you're in East County today?
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm in 92101. And I thought this background, this flag, would be very appropriate for today's show. So I switched it on to that, and it looks pretty good, actually. Okay. So recently you were on another program. Um, and I saw that. Uh, and I can't remember the name of it right now, but you were talking about not energy independence, but something to do with international trade. And I forget the organization, but you're all dressed up in a suit and looking good.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I'm sorry, I don't remember which one it is now. Um, so you've been on the speaking circuit?
Yeah, I do presentations pretty regularly, mostly online here the last few years. I was out at University of San Diego, though, a couple of weeks back, talking about Russia and the global energy system. There was a energy security class in the political
That's right.
science.
I think that's what it was.
Mm.
Yeah. So who attended that? Was it students or
It
was it
was students.
yeah,
Yeah, I was
not
a
business
guest.
people?
No, I mean it's certainly it's a topic. Um, it was designed for an energy security, is designed for the students, but certainly could be done anywhere for any group. And I think one of the takeaways really that I wanted to have the students take away was the global nature of the system, that it is an ecosystem, and it's crucial to think about human reality in ecosystemic terms. It's very difficult to, well, one can draw artificial lines and create artificial identities, but there will be costs that emerge out of that.
What kind of costs?
Either higher costs of production, costs of distribution, political costs, higher investment costs.
social costs?
Sure. Costs in general, but certainly economic first and foremost, because that's really where uh, that would be like the source of the social costs. You know, if someone's paying more for something, that might result in social costs. But the what's going on in terms of adjusting the economic system to fit a security reality or a strategic reality, the first point at which those costs become apparent is in the commercial sector. And they're distributed more, widely after that across the population, so it's less immediately apparent. But it's, if you have a job at one of those companies, or if you're a shareholder at one of those companies, and things can become unexpectedly complicated. But also in terms of national governance, there was an effort to sanction Rusal, a big aluminum producer in Russia, a few years ago, and basically it seized up the global market. It was a very almost a panic backtracking by DC. They had not done their homework in terms of how integrated the system was. And we've developed an amazing world, uh, very efficient economic production, and we're changing the rules of that. So, going the route of industrial policy and all. But anyways, I'm kind
Let
of
me
running
ask
on.
you about the news this week of Exxon spending
Yeah,
60, $70 billion to
yeah,
acquire the large shale company.
yeah.
And now this is major news. And the beginning of that news cycle earlier this week got me, or last week, got me this idea to run this program today about the idea of um, celebrating and making it work positively as much as possible American energy independence, which could be forever now, but taxing it, putting a national sales tax that everybody pays. Gas guzzlers will pay higher taxes than people in a Volkswagen or electric cars, and so be it. But allocating a portion of that new production money coming in for specifically debt reduction goes into an account, an investment account that somebody manages honestly, hopefully, and that we can watch the deficit hopefully go down and down over time.
Mm,
And all of that money goes to prop up the financial markets, lower costs, lower risks,
mm,
because there's a production means and an encouragement, and it's like a unity government idea that we need to do this. We need to take the bull by the horns of reducing that debt. And here is a way that will benefit everybody. And I am not an economist, so I'm sure I'm missing things, but I see this as a way to go. In addition to the taxing of gambling, um, making it legal and now taxing it, there's a huge inflow of new monies into state coffers and federal from gambling. And now I see even bigger and much more plentiful from this energy, knowing that it'll be years before there's a sufficiency of electric vehicles and uh, batteries that work. So fossil is going to be with us a very long time. Let's hope it gets managed right and clean and extremely productive. not that, in my view, not that there should be pumping oil wells down here on San Diego Avenue here, but certainly in areas that can be deemed safe or in areas that have a resource, have a deep resource of reservoir of oil and gas. Anyway, I've talked too much about it, but I thought that that would be one of the good questions for discussion now.
Well, that's you've covered a lot of territory. Uh, so indeed,
And I want to say right away, this is nonpartisan,
yeah,
not Republican, not Democrat, not independent. It's just, it's for everybody. And let's get behind
yeah,
it.
yeah. So uh, you designed this conversation to approach a couple topics, the energy independence and then the debt reduction, and whether I'm hearing you to wonder if there's a way to connect the two. Uh, so in the Exxon's takeover of Pioneer buyout, is the biggest splash in uh, the world of shale this year. That is the big story this year in shale has been M&A, mergers and acquisition. As relatively weak pricing has made it more profitable to buy production an opportunity than to actually do it. We're coming to the end of the shale boom. It will boom when prices are high, and when prices are low, it will fade. But we're coming to more difficult times in the geology side of it. It's in terms of taxing energy, I think that's an interesting idea. Energy is used by everyone, and some use a lot, you know, and others use a lot less. So it might be a way in which taxation could be kind of balanced so that you're not necessarily screwing one group over another. Um, we do have the United States has a significant deficit problem. We've got a real challenge in, you know, balancing our aspirations and our resources, and our managing that process is pretty dysfunctional right now. The politics are insane. uh, and we are now entering a period of really profound gridlock. I mean, just with the with McCarthy being voted out as speaker, until there's a new speaker in the House can't take up any new business. Any. There's only one agenda item, a new speaker. So I'm, the government budget, which was almost there was almost a government shutdown at the end of September, beginning of October, and they rolled it out for 45 days. So come the middle of November, that whole government shutdown thing is going to come back to the front seats. I mean, it's going to come to the front of the line, and right, we're not going to be able to deal with it. I'm seeing a real opportunity for a self-inflicted train wreck of the first order. And it'll be interesting to see if, we have these aspirations, we have all these resources. It's a rich country, okay? We can deal with all of these problems if we choose to. What I hear you saying is that it's time that we pull together and solve these problems, because it's like my sense is you feel them they're coming. I mean, this train is coming. Wake up. Let's deal with this. There's no need for this wreck. So I don't know. I'm kind of paraphrasing a bit here, but I'm really definitely concerned. But your idea of taxing energy as a way to create a stream of income that's broadly based and focus it on balancing our accounts.
Yeah. So in some of the notes you sent over about, you raised a question about how does Canada and Mexico fit
Yeah,
into this scheme. Now, Mexico is a huge, and Canada is a huge energy producer. Um, and maybe what I've read about is that in Mexico in particular, there's not only just a large infrastructure to produce energy, but I guess the system's corrupt and just never modernized from that limited view I have. That's what I see holding it back. There's so much oil there all along. I mean, Mexico's a huge country, uh,
Mexico's big.
and they're full of those mountains, and they must be all full of shale.
There's an extension of the shale from Texas into northeastern Mexico. Uh, the the legal system in Mexico is different in terms of the ownership of the subsoil rights. The state owns those, while in the United States, they're private with the landowners, and you can sell the mineral rights and still control what goes on top of the. It, we have a market system in the United States. You do not have a market system in Mexico. It's very, very different. For Mexico is a major customer, actually. I mean, the reputation is that Mexico is a big oil exporter, and they're fading for the reasons that you are pointing out, partly corruption, but the lack of investment. And Canada is huge. We get half of our oil imports from Canada. The United States still imports around 8 million barrels a day. We actually export more liquids than we import. So we're independent, but because of the refinery structure that we have and all, we get half our oil imports, heavier oils from Canada. So it's an important, and Hampton would uh, would point out that Canada is seen as a strategic, safe partner of the United States, and that importing products, minerals, oil, energy from Canada is a pretty safe thing. The, the systems are so the U.S. is importing half the oil that it imports comes from Canada, and we actually are pretty balanced in terms of where stuff comes from abroad. But the United States is a net exporter. This It's one of the reasons why I brought up the issue of natural gas liquids, things like propane, and it's part of the world of fracking. And it gets into this artificial drawing of lines. Propane is a hydrocarbon, and you can, heat your home with it. Lots of people do here in the San Diego area, in the rural area, and in the Midwest. It's a liquid, but we don't count it as oil. It's this natural gas liquids, which is not talked about. But the U.S. exports 1.5 million barrels a day of propane a day. It's a huge number.
So is this the liquefied natural gas that you sent over to Europe?
No, it's different.
Mm.
So LNG is liquefied natural gas is liquefied methane. Propane is a bigger molecule. It's
Well,
it's
I
different.
have a can of it on my porch here.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. You know, it's and it's a these in much of the world, they depend on these canisters of propane. That they cook with it, they live with it. Um, so it actually the United States is a net exporter of hydrocarbons on a large scale.
So is it smart or is it dumb for us to reduce imports from Canada and just rely on our own? Or is it a fact that the US makes money by exporting as part of an international trade order, whereby we purposely still import while striving to export?
Part of it is that our oil refining structure, our capacity far exceeds the demand that we have in the United States. The demand for automotive fuels has not kept up with the projections of 10 or 20 years ago. Uh, so we're exporting a lot of gasoline and diesel, especially to Latin America and now to Europe with the sanctions on Russia. The Canadians are nervous about them possibly being squeezed out of the American market, uh, but that's not really happening. It is a business opportunity, uh, and it's interesting that the generally when Americans think about energy security, they think about wanting to protect ourselves from imports from volatile, dangerous parts of the world. But actually, when you're selling stuff abroad, you're kind of dependent. You have partnerships, you have relationships, commercial relationships. So the shoe's on the other foot in a way. It's a different set of challenges. Uh, I mean, the ideal arrangement would be not to import or export, but that's really an artificial concept. Uh, yeah, I mean, from Mexico's standpoint, for example, they import on the order of 600,000 barrels a day of gasoline from the U.S. because of their weak refining sector. They export all this crude oil to us, and then they import back gasoline. It's a weird.
It's crazy making.
It's
Wow.
weird, but it became big politics in Mexico. And it's like, well, we have all this energy. Why are we importing it from the United States? We're kind of like overly dependent on the United States. And something similar is emerging in U.S. natural gas to Mexico, where Mexico is a big importer. Uh, but yeah, so the United States, because of the fracking boom, has changed the world of energy, has changed the structure of the energy complex worldwide.
So let me ask you, if I may, before I forget.
Yeah,
Fracking did the US invent that?
yes.
Okay. Are we licensing it out around the world or are we hanging on to it?
Um,
I mean, the big companies that have international operations, they're already doing it in other places, not just in the US.
sure. So the technology is understood. It's not patented. There may be some aspects that are. Um, it turns out that there are, in Argentina, for example, the Vaca Muerta region of the northwestern and west central Argentina, they have very productive geology for this. Saudi Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula is another area. but shale is China as well, a more complicated thing in terms of gas from shale for China. But not all shale is productive or profitable. So I mean, just because you could technically do something doesn't mean that it's commercially viable. And so shales like in Poland and Eastern Europe have not worked out. It is being tried elsewhere, but the United States is blessed with favorable geology, favorable land rights, great infrastructure. Texas has all this roads and pipelines. You go to northeastern Mexico, where they have the geology is right, but they don't have the legal system and they don't have the infrastructure. So they'd have to build all that, and that costs money. And they'd have to make a political decision to do it. And the Mexicans have their own challenges in that regard. Actually, Saudi Arabia is probably the most interesting, along with Argentina, is the most interesting place for fracking outside the U.S.
It's very interesting what's going on. Now, there's some movement, some political movement to do business with Venezuela, and because they're sitting on a ton of oil. And I don't know whether it's at the bottom of that big lake or whether it's in shale or what. But I know Biden has reached out to make some kind of inroads, relationship building and do business,
They're trying,
normalize.
yeah. So the sanctioning Russia has uh, created pressures to revisit some relationships. The sanctioning on Venezuela was essentially intervening in the Venezuela's domestic political situation. It is, and Maduro is certainly an autocrat. The level of corruption in Venezuela is mind-boggling, even by Venezuelan standards. It's a complicated scene. There have been some little openings for Chevron, for example, but it's still on the edge. Venezuela does have large resources of very heavy oil, similar to what the Canadians have. Not so much oil sands or tar sands in Venezuela, but very, very, very heavy shallow oil in Venezuela, and it lots of carbon, very energy intensive to get out, but they have a lot of it. There are other opportunities in Venezuela as well. Actually, part of the opening with Venezuela is creating supply opportunities for Trinidad and Tobago. It's a little country offshore off the northeastern coast of South America, and it was the home of really the first Western Hemisphere LNG, and they were shipping it to the United States back when we didn't have gas as much as we wanted. Well, the Trinidadians are running out of their own natural gas, and they're looking for local or regional supplies to feed their LNG, which may end up heading into Europe because there's no market for it in the United States anymore. But it's some interesting things are developing there. Politics and economics make for really strange bedfellows.
Well, let's talk for a minute about renewables, but not just now. I have another question, though, if I could bring that up. And you could redirect if you think I'm going off crazy here. Sempra, San Diego Gas and Electric parent company, Sempra, headquartered right down the street here. And yeah, they're huge in Mexico and elsewhere.
Yeah.
And they're using Ensenada, which is about 90 minutes south of here, as a major port of entry for years. And because apparently San Diego doesn't want oil tankers coming in the harbor with all the military here, and um, and so the closest port is Ensenada.
There's a big LNG import facility there, and yeah, the military had a say in it. It's a large facility, and it would be very difficult to fit into the San Diego port, a very developed downtown San Diego. It'd be really tough to find a couple thousand acres of open territory to lay in an LNG import facility. Not a couple thousand acres, but certainly several hundred. And for a number of years, LNG has been coming in to Mexico, partly from Mexico, but also there was some coming into the Southwest. That's reversing. And there's now, this will all be converted to export. It'll be substantially expanded to export
From Mexico.
LNG out of Mexico. The gas will come from Texas, from the Permian Basin. And Sempra is involved in other projects, LNG projects in Mexico, where the gas produced in Texas piped across Mexico, liquefied in Mexico, and then exported into the Pacific Basin. So that's
What's the Pacific Basin?
China, Japan, Pacific Ocean, China, Japan, Korea, Southeast Asia.
As an energy resource.
Yeah, and those are big demand markets. Japan and Korea in particular have very limited domestic energy resources, thereby their commitment to nuclear in particular. China has a lot of resources, but they have this big economy, and some of the urban areas they've wanted to move away from coal to gas. So China is now coming on pretty close to the #1 importer of LNG in the world as a single country. Europe is larger as aggregate. But one of the big attractions to investing in LNG, shipping U.S. gas out of Mexico, is that you don't have to use the Panama Canal, which is overloaded now.
And they're not going to build a new canal anywhere.
Well,
Anytime soon.
they already built the second one in Panama, and they're not going to build another one. And there was the old talk about maybe
Nicaragua. Yeah.
Nicaragua and all, but no.
Yeah. So that makes the west coast of Mexico, of Baja, I guess, um, a gold mine.
Well, so the Ensenada facility, Baja's got some nice port areas. Most of the future LNG facilities would be built on the mainland Pacific coast of Mexico, Sonora, Sinaloa, Sinaloa in particular, and further south. So Baja generally will remain kind of on the edge, but that Costa Azul facility in Ensenada is going to be expanded.
What about just south of Rosarito Beach? There was a port of some kind that's been developed, but I think they're afraid of screwing up the tourism business, and it really hasn't developed more.
It hasn't. It's Colonia. I'd have to look up the name, but it's been on the map for 20 years to do this, and they were going to try to take business away from LA Long Beach in particular, but they needed to build the infrastructure, rail in particular, because the cargo coming into Mexico, into that port, would end up in the United States, almost all of it. And it was, honestly, it was a case of drawing artificial lines. We have this beautiful piece of geography, deep water, and we can put a port there that, yeah, tourism is important. I get that, but there was room for this port. But the guys, the people that were thinking about developing this as a major port facility, didn't think through the the land side logistics, the rail, and then clearing things across an international border. We have challenges now on our border. um, so thinking things through, what may look attractive on the surface, when you get down into it a little bit, sometimes it's more complicated and not doesn't work out. Other times you scratch below the surface and wow, what an opportunity we have here. So yeah.
Yeah. So the renewables,
Mm,
if we could just spend a few minutes on this.
sure.
Uh, I think it's a great idea to have the wind farms and out in Palm Springs there, along the 10. It's just amazing what goes
Yeah,
on there.
yeah.
And so how does that work? The wind blows through the pass and it turns those huge turbines.
Mhm.
And is that all connected with wires underground? So where does the energy flow? It goes into what, a generating plant underground or
Well, the
someplace?
the generator's in the windmill itself.
Yeah.
Each windmill is a generator. And yes, the electricity is channeled through wires, and consolidated, and then hooks into the grid itself, uh, through local transmission lines.
Hmm.
So it's when the wind blows, it's great. Yeah, and renewables have made a big impact. They've taken a significant market share at particular times of the day, especially in the daylight hours. Uh, there are challenges, though, emerging in the kind of where we are in California now with the penetration of renewables, uh, in in terms of the stability of the grid. Uh, it's a it's a big topic. Um,
Meaning there's not enough capacity? When you said stability, that's the first thing that came to mind then.
right. So where electricity is generated and where it's consumed. So electricity is a uh, it is produced and consumed essentially at the same moment in time. Electricity moves essentially at the speed of light. I mean, it's very fast. So when your production is in a different area than where the consumption is, you need to have transmission, and a lot of it. That's turning out to be a big issue for California. And then in the evening, solar is a big deal here, even bigger than wind by far. When the sun starts to go down in the afternoon, say around 5 o'clock, in the warmer parts of when in the summertime, for example, the big demand for electricity is in the evening when people get home from work, turn the air conditioner on, kick the stove or the microwave, turn the TV on, things like that. Uh, so where to find that supply? So instead of in the daytime coming from solar in one place, it comes from gas in another place, or is imported from out of state. Um, the idea behind renewables is essentially decentralized generation. And in order to do that, you're going to have a tremendous amount of transmission, a very fine network of transmission, not just going from some big plant to, into the grid, so to speak. So one of the challenges that the renewables or the new renewables facilities are having is when they plug in over here, the demand is there, but it's over there. I don't know how to explain this, but it throws the grid off balance. You can use batteries to some degree to help that out. But when we get at the scale that we're headed and where we're at, what works on a small scale becomes the behavior of the system is different at a large scale. I don't know how to. Uh, it presents a whole set of new challenges. I mean, so there are some that are presenting renewables as a magical answer. And if Hampton was on the call here, we would talk about the critical minerals and all that are part of the electrification process and all. It's going to require a lot more investment than it looked like in the beginning, for sure, in storage and transmission. But there is an opportunity, you know, going back to the beginning of the conversation, the taxation of energy, be it to facilitate decarbonization or to deal with the deficit. So and how that taxation would affect what is still very much subsidy and tax credit driven investment in renewables, how that all plays out is going to be interesting. I mean, one of the big holes in the government budget in the years to come is just how we really don't know how big the subsidies are going to be for renewables, for reshoring of computer chips and all. There's kind of an open-ended aspect to it, which is a bit unnerving from a budgetary standpoint. Industry loves it because you can harvest. You do business with one customer, the government.
So in Texas, not Texas, in Phoenix, there seems to be chip center from central from now on. They have all that open space there in the southeast of Phoenix, Chandler South, all along 10, and this vast acreage. So that's what they're doing. They're building chip factory after chip factory, not just the Taiwanese, but other Intel and others, and services. Mm-hmm. So I mean, boomtown. So do they have enough energy to do all that? From what you just
turns out water is they'll have the energy. Water will be a bigger issue for Arizona industry. The chip industry is a big consumer of high quality water, and it needs to be reliable and it needs to be, economic. I mean, it's even before this change in strategic perspective and all. I mean, the Phoenix area was a big place for Intel and other chip makers to go because they had years. That for years. They had the land. People wanted to go there. The weather is nice there a lot of the year. It's hot in the summertime, but hey, it's housing was inexpensive. It was a good place to go. People went there. They voted with their feet. Companies voted with their wallets, and these were, well-considered investment decisions. They just didn't fly off the handle and say, we're going to put $5-10 billion into a chip plant for fun. The effort to transplant chip making from Asia, from Taiwan in particular, but also from Korea, particularly Taiwan, it's turning out to be there are issues, the cultural issues between the management and all of the Taiwanese operations. They're used to operating in Taiwan. There's there is that ecosystem that you kind of referred to, with all the services and the related companies that feed into the chip world. That's coming in Phoenix area, but it's a long way from what it is on the western side of Taiwan. They'll have the energy. Water's an issue. Uh, Arizona is kind of like the last. They feel the shortfalls first, and they pay the most.
So I did an interview, a couple of interviews with Brian Hageman, who's an inventor, and he invented an engine that runs on water. And he's in the Phoenix area. And I'll send you the program link to the most recent interview we did, he and I, on this very issue. And he's in Buckeye area, which is to the west of Phoenix. Um, Huge underground water supply, but it's briny water. It's
Yeah,
great for growing fertilizer and grass, and
yeah.
but not is not ready for no good for drinking.
You got a desal, yeah. And can you make it pay? But it's
I don't think in Chandler South area there it's the same situation, but I don't know uh, what kind of water they have. I know they have that aquifer right underneath there.
they do, and they've been
Mhm.
producing from it pretty heavily. They've been overdrawing from the aquifer. The Central Arizona project was a way to connect into the Colorado. It was a late Arizona was the last. Well, Vegas has come in since, but really Arizona was the last big customer to draw on the river. But the population has grown so much that they have this clash between the urban requirements for water and still having agriculture. And probably the thing that ultimately is going to, the real decisions in Arizona are going to be about water use and at what price.
Well, it sounds like Central Valley, California,
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
big
Oh, oh,
time.
only the guys in Central Valley, California, better pay attention to what's going on in Arizona. They will actually be the ones that chart the road to the future,
Well,
because
they have first dibs. It's closer there, right?
they have first dibs. But when supplies get tight, they're on the front edge. They are
Yeah.
on the cutting edge in Arizona on these challenges. So, but hey, if you're looking to work, have a you know as a professional and raise a family, you got to be looking at the Phoenix area.
Yeah, it's excellent. Beautiful metro area. Very familiar with it. We've had a couple of condos there. Paradise Valley. It's right in between Scottsdale and North Phoenix.
Okay.
And Cactus Mall is across the street, and there's Costco and Target and whatever. And it's right on a golf course, which is right there too, which is always green.
Yeah. Well, in half an hour away, you're up in the mountains. So,
Just
it's
about, yeah, yeah. Anyway, I've really found this to be Harvard education right here, and I thank you for talking to my audience.
you're very welcome, Ed. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, and we'll get Hampton to come in, and he'll bring his defense industry perspective, which is very sharp. And thank you,
It'll be
David
fun.
EDICK.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Thank you. Signing off.